Hi, it's Tash. Welcome to Tash's Library. Today's video is my February wrap-up video where I discuss the books that I read and what I thought of them. Now, February had 8 books on my TBR and I completed all of them and still managed to finish up a book that I had started in January. These were all very chunky books, and so I'm very proud of my achievements in February. The first book I read was All Clear by Connie Willis, and this was for the prompt a sequel. This was obvious to me because I'd read Blackout in December and just could not wait to get to this book because it finished off on a major cliffhanger. So it is a direct sequel to Blackout. I would recommend reading them close together, and they are both part of the Oxford Time Travel series, where time-traveling historians travel back to various events in World War II, so Dunkirk, the Blitz, the evacuation of children, etc., only to discover that things haven't gone exactly to plan. I love Connie Willis. People know this about me if you've watched any of my videos. This is a highly realistic account of World War II. It is poignant, heartwarming, occasionally humorous as well. The portrayal of the Blitz is just exquisite. The portrayal of the ordinary heroes of war, the ordinary people, and how they coped with an unimaginable situation. The immense detail, so thoroughly researched, and she still manages to maintain the suspense throughout what is an enormous book. It is a very big book, but yet very quick to read because it's just so readable. Her writing is so readable. The structure and plotting are quite chaotic, but this perfectly reflects the chaos and uncertainty of the situation. The book explores themes of heroism, the human spirit in the face of adversity, friendship, and camaraderie. There was nothing I disliked about this book, which says a lot because I don't usually like reading about war. If it's about World War I, World War II, any other war, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to skip that book. And the only reason I picked these up is because I had read the other 2 books in this particular series, to say nothing of the Dog and Doomsday book, and adored them. And so I'm like, okay, I have to read these books. And I'm so glad I did. I would highly recommend these to any lovers of slice of life with a sci-fi flavor, with a frequent sprinkling of humor and sustained tension. I then read Dan Simmons' Endymion, and this is the 3rd book in the Hyperion Cantos. This was for the prompt a book of a quest or a heist, and I adored this book as well. It's, as I said, the 3rd book in the Hyperion Cantos. The first book, Hyperion, follows a group of pilgrims on their way to the time tombs where the mysterious and deadly Shrike resides. So in the style of the Canterbury Tales, each pilgrim then tells a tale of the reasons for their journey. I love the quest in Endymion. Now, Endymion is a little bit different from Hyperion and even Fall of Hyperion. It's more of a quest journey story, and I think that's why some people maybe don't like it as much. But I love quest stories, and so this was great. There was also a very disturbing yet amazing use of technology. There's political conniving. There are themes of duty and loyalty versus morality. It explores religion and colonization and includes one of the most terrifying nemeses that I've read in quite some time. Simmons has a captivating writing style, and there is further development of the mystery of the Shrike. This was just ultimately a fun, engaging read, and while not as literary or epic as the first 2 books, it's just great read that I would recommend to any lovers of journey quests. I also read The Guns of Avalon by Roger Zelazny. This was for the prompt an object in the title, and this is the 2nd book in the Chronicles of Amber series. Now, in 9 Princes of Amber, which is the first book, Corwin wakes in a hospital with no memory of his past, and he must find his way back to the land of Amber and survive numerous threats and political intrigue. I gave this 4 stars. I really love Zelazny's writing style. I have come to really appreciate his books in general. I don't think I haven't come across a book yet that I haven't really liked. He builds a very cool and intricate world in this. Amber's incredible. He has nuanced, flawed characters who you don't quite like, yet you're rooting for them. He sustains a sense of threat throughout the story. There's a very good plot twist as well in this one. I did prefer the first book, however, because the second one had a lot more wandering, which is why it went down to a 4-star, where I'd given the first book a 5-star. I would recommend this to lovers of traditional style fantasy with an interdimensional twist. I then read a non-fiction book, Through the Language Glass by Guy Deutscher, and this was for the prompt A Book Grid. This is a linguistic examination of the extent to which culture influences language and vice versa. Now, I gave this 3 stars. I really like the chapter on gender in this and how different languages have words that take on different genders. I really wanted more of that type of analysis and how languages come up with words for certain things. I really wanted that. And I also have to say the book is very well researched. However, it did not deliver on what is promised on the cover. The majority of the book focuses on color perception and the words for color in languages. And whilst this is interesting, he just goes on and on about it, and there is just too much on the history of the linguistic theories. Many of them that he then shows were proven wrong. He spent 60 pages on a theory that have subsequently been rejected. This is a bit too much in my opinion. I wanted more on the gender and other language variations across the world. Also, there were so many quotes. Every single paragraph had at least 1 quote, if not more. And this disrupted the flow of the writing for what is really marketed as a popular non-fiction book, not as an academic text. And this made for somewhat dry reading at times. There is also a lot of reference to sophisticated versus primitive cultures. Now, I have to admit, I am not a linguist. I know very little about linguistics. So this may be a linguistic convention, but it didn't sit well with me. So look, I would recommend this book to those interested in the history of linguistics, particularly related to the perception of color and the development of words for color and groupings of color. If you're interested in that, you will like this book. However, if you want a wide coverage of how different languages use different words, then this book is probably not for you. I read a massive chunk of a book in February as well, and that is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This was for the prompt A Bookworm Game, Things in the Big Bang Theory, and I went with stars. This is the first book in the Fractal verse, which follows Kira, a xenobiologist working on an uncolonized planet that is being terraformed and prepared for settlers. When she comes across an alien artifact, however, her life and the entire universe is thrown into turmoil. Now, I gave this 3 stars. There is enormous inconsistency in the main character, in her emotional responses and decisions. Now, I don't believe you need to like a character to follow their story. What you do need to have is consistency. So if they are a silly person, then they are silly throughout. If they are meant to be an educated, intelligent person, then the majority of their decisions should at least be based on some sort of intellect. She is a biologist who has worked on all these planets. She should be fairly self-sufficient and fairly grown adults, and yet the way she speaks and the way she interacts with people is so young adult, bordering on adolescence, and that kind of annoyed me because it didn't fit in with the character she is. Her inner voice just became highly irritating as well. She just wavered between whinging about things that didn't really matter and then completely glossing over one of the most tragic days of her life. She gets over that incredibly quickly from the sounds of it. But anyway, this book is just too long as well. It's just so long, and it was just such a slog to read. However, the reason I gave it 3 stars is because the supporting characters are wonderful. And while some of them are a bit stereotypical, for example, you've got a real Han Solo type character. He's great. There's a shipmind, Grigorovich, who's incredible. There's a very cool pig animal companion, and very cool aliens. I really enjoyed the aliens. First contact scenario, and I really enjoy first contact stories. And so all of this sort of kept me reading, and they kept me engaged in the story. The plot was really interesting. This book had a lot of promise, and there were just a lot of issues with the execution of it, particularly with regard to the characterization of the protagonist. However, if anyone's looking for a softer science fiction with a YA feel, then they may really like this book, because I think it's just too soft on the sci-fi for me, from the science. But if you enjoy that, then you might like this. I then read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I love Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was for the Prompt and Illustrated Spine. And this book is inspired by H.G. Wells's The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is it's an historical science fiction fantasy sort of blend set in the Yucatan Peninsula. It is told from the perspectives of Carlotta, who is Dr. Moreau's daughter, and Monty, who's a tragic figure who comes to work with the doctor. This is a tale ultimately of morally suspect scientific experiments and a very patriarchal and colonial world. I gave this 4 stars. It has very well developed, very flawed characters. Carlotta is fiery and irrational and somewhat unlikable at times. Monty has challenges of his mental health and a predilection for alcohol, but the characters are consistent throughout and so thoughtfully written that you keep wanting to find out what is happening for them. There's a great exploration of morality versus societal mores, because of course those two things don't always align. There is an exploration of the themes of repression and class structures as well. However, this is slow burn. This is a very slow burn novel. It is also more historical fiction than fantasy or sci-fi. So I would recommend this for lovers of historical speculative fiction, those who enjoy deep character studies and atmospheric settings. I also finally finished the Six of Crows duology with Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, and this was for the prompt A Bird on the Cover. This immediately follows Six of Crows, the first book, in which a ragtag team plan a risky heist. The plot twists in this are fabulous. It has a very satisfying ending for the whole duology. Character motivations are deeply explored. The heist is incredibly entertaining, very well plotted. However, I slightly preferred the first book, although having said that, this one held up because I gave it 5 stars anyway. There was nothing I really disliked in this. although there was one event that did upset me, and if you know, you know, it was a bit heartbreaking, and I wish it hadn't happened, but it certainly made sense in the scheme of the story. So I'd recommend this to any lovers of heists and twisty plots. Continued another series, The Subtle Knife, by Philip Pullman. So this is the second book in the His Dark Materials trilogy. And this was for the prompt random series pick. Now, in the first book, Northern Lights, Lyra is an orphan who lives in an Oxford University college under the care of a guardian. One night she overhears a dangerous conversation which propels her into an adventure to the Polar North. This is a very immersive story with endearing characters and a high-stakes threat. I felt that this second book was probably definitely a middle book, so it wasn't quite as good as the first book, which was superbly wonderful. I loved the first book so much. This one also gets quite dark in places. Some pretty horrific things happen, and there's definitely no resolution, and it does end on a cliffhanger. So as I said, middle book syndrome, you're really just continuing on and then getting to the third book, which I haven't read yet, but I plan to very soon, hopefully. However, just it explores themes such as religion and family. There's the introduction of a wonderful new character who I really liked. And I would really recommend this series to those looking for a dark, Narnia-like story, but with anti-religious themes. And then I finished the book that I'd started in January at the very end. And this is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martine. This is the second book in the Text-Kalan duology. And in the first book, A Memory of Empire, Ambassador Zmare arrives in the Text-Kalani capital to discover that her predecessor was murdered. Now she needs to navigate a different culture and deep political intrigue to ensure her own survival and to protect her home world. I really liked this series in general, and this second book is pretty much holds up to the first book. This one looks at first contact, which is one of my favorite tropes, which is great. There's wonderful political wheeling and dealing, just like the first book. There's exploration of themes of culture and duty, spectacular world building, which is just seeps into every aspect of culture, very cool technology, and a highly satisfying ending. This is a slow burn though, just like the first book with regard to plotting. It probably could have been shorter, and the supporting characters, in my opinion, are actually a bit stronger than the main characters. And so this sort of brought it down for me. And I ended up giving both books actually in this series 4 stars. But I would really recommend this series to any lovers of political intrigue and exploration of cultural differences in science fiction. And that is that. They're the 9 books, well, sort of 8.5 books that I read. I really enjoyed this reading month. It was interesting and varied, and I certainly put away some large tomes. Well, thank you for watching, and until I see you next time, take care.